Hello there, we are your hosts Vivek and Pavitra from the Agile Coach podcast. In this podcast, we bring fresh perspectives to you through our interviews with thought leaders in Agile coaching, facilitation, business analysis, and product management roles. Enjoy. Hey everybody, we have Joe today again for the third time in the podcast, and we have some really cool topics planned. So you already know Joe's background. Joe's been an expert Agile coach. I have actually worked with Joe in a few different projects, taught a few courses with him. One of my favorite instructors to teach with and to learn from. And Joe, you actually recently got certified in ICE from ICE Agile, which is the highest ranking or highest level of certification in coaching, Agile coaching. So tell us what that is about.
Yeah, so sure. So ICE for me stands for ICE Agile Expert in Agile Coaching. So team coaching specifically. There's a different certification for enterprise coaches, which I'm looking into. Jolene's getting that now, but I haven't gotten it yet. But yep, that's me.
Sounds good, Joe. So the thing that we want to explore is you going as a Scrum Master or as an Agile coach, going into a new team. How do you show up as a coach and a facilitator? So share with us, how do you go and what do you do? What's your mindset when you go into a new team that's doing Agile or starting to do Agile?
Sure. So one of the biggest things that I've come into or started to realize is that I need to be wanted. Like the team has to want me there. So one of the first things that I do is I start asking questions around who brought me in? Is it an executive that feels like the team is underperforming? Did the team request me? Who basically requested me? And then afterwards, I got this advice from Olaf, where you go to the team and you say, I've been instructed to coach you. I've been instructed to help you on Agile practices. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
And then get their feedback on what they think, how they feel about it. Also, I can't stress this enough. When you work with when you work with a Scrum Master as an Agile coach, if the team already has one, you have to take very special care of that relationship because that person is going to be there after you leave. So you need to make sure that you help build them up, but also you need to be careful that you don't let them take too much control of the team. So I've been in situations where I was working with a Scrum Master. They brought me in to coach and the Scrum Master just says, hey, just tell me if I'm doing anything wrong. Otherwise, just stay in the background.
Yeah.
If somebody says that to you, that's an enormous red flag.
Yeah.
Because that means they don't want to work with you at all. They just basically want you to hide in the background and occasionally pop up with little words of wisdom. We call that seagull coaching, where you just swoop and poop on the team. So it is not great.
Yeah. So I'm curious, so when you are going in this team and there's a Scrum Master, you're kind of assessing where the team is at, right? So I'm just curious, how do you assess that? Do you use kind of a mental model like Suhari and kind of assess them based on different areas of working as a team? Like, how do you do that?
There's a bunch of different tools. So for me, since I've been on high performing teams, I know what they look like. So I start to look for some of the things that I've seen before. Is the team happy? Are they collaborative? Are they supporting each other? Are they willing to do things that aren't necessarily in their, job title? So if you're a tester, are you willing to help out with writing user stories? If you're a developer, are you willing to help test? But basically, are they willing to go above and beyond what it just says for their little niche? But if you're starting out and you don't have those experiences, there are some really cool things that you can use, like Scaled Agile Framework. They have some really cool things that you can use to assess a team. The Agility Health Radar is out there. That one's more expensive. But if you're working at a company that has that, there's a lot of really good information that you can get there too. But that's primarily what I look for. And then one of the other things that I do is I immediately sit down with the team and I ask them, What do you like? What do you like about how you're working as a team? What do you dislike? And then usually I'll start tackling the things that they dislike first to get some momentum with the team to show them that we can make things better.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is something that you and I have talked about, Joe. So for me, when I go into the team, I am just, paying attention to what's happening. I'm actually looking at the product backlog, the work itself, the dynamics between the team and the leadership. I am, this is actually something that I learned from you, Joe, is I actually, in the meetings, I'll write down some things that are relevant because, you forget, I forget. So I literally write down some things that were like, oh, wow, this is interesting. So I write down things that I see what might be an opportunity for growth or something that I'm not sure about, just for my own mental sake of like understanding where the team is at. I've also done written text about what I've heard. So, and what I've seen, right? So when you have, those different those data points, it actually helps me ask much better question and gain deeper understanding where the team might be.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I know Lisa likes to call that holding up the mirror. So being that person who, as the craziness is happening, can say, okay, hold on, folks. Here's what I saw. Somebody over here said this, and then I saw this physical reaction. What's going on, folks? And then let them talk through it and facilitate the conversation around what's happening rather than saying, okay, you're doing this wrong. You need to do this and you need to do that.
Yeah. So I'm curious, I'm curious how you do it. So obviously when you go in, you might see a certain things from your experience, your lens, and you think they're important for the team to maybe focus on. And then there are items that team members might bring up in retro, or they might say, which might not hold the same value in terms of effectiveness to the overall organization. How do you prioritize like where you're going to invest your energy in terms of helping teams change or really probe or try to make improvement on the area?
Well, the first part is you have to get a good start. So whenever possible, what I like to do is tell the team, okay, look, we're going to do a reset. So, and you don't want to necessarily take them away from their product goals or anything like that. You could just say, we're going to do a reset. We're going to work things a little differently. For the next 2 weeks, me and the Scrum Master are going to partner and I'll take the lead, but we're going to partner to make sure that the team is working in a positive way. And if things are positive, great. We don't need to change them. But if you don't start off this way, what you're going to find is that there are going to be 50 tiny little things that you're going to have to go after and chase and try to resolve. But if you start from the very beginning and you say, look, folks, I get it. You folks have been doing this for a while. I completely respect that. I'm not trying to, shoot anybody down or make anyone feel bad. However, I'd like us to start from this place. And then once we've been working from that for a while, then it's up to you folks to decide, does this work for me? If not, we'll change it and then go from there.
Yeah. So what kind of activities does that team restart entail? Like what do you have under that campaign, like team restart?
Sure. I try to keep it down to a day if I can, a day, maybe 2 tops, because you don't want to derail people. I do like to make it in person.
Yeah.
So if I can get people in a room, I will, and I will fight tooth and nail for that, because one of the hardest things that you experience in a virtual environment is objectification. So people become objects and not people. So if they're not connected to you, like if you haven't hung out with them, if you haven't built that sense of, hey, this is a person and I like working with them, then anytime anything goes wrong, it's going to be, oh, that annoying person, or oh, that tester, or oh, that this. That's always a warning sign. If somebody refers to somebody as a tester and not by their name, then they're objectifying the person.
Yeah. On the restarts that I've done, Joe, I'm curious, how do you execute this? So like the components of that, I've done like a working agreement if the team didn't have it. And then kind of doing like a future perspective is like, okay, next 90 day, where do you want to go? And within that, mine was around like 4.5 hours. What are some product goals? What are we shooting? What are some KPIs we're shooting for? But how do we want to be as a team, which is, how do we celebrate, when is the retrospective? How do we show up? Like, having those conversation and yeah, you're right. If it's just remote, it's much more trickier. However, these days there's, teams just all around the world, and it's, hybrid. A lot of companies are taking hybrid approach, team members working in India, here, Brazil. So anything you would like to add in that agenda, anything different that you do?
Great question. And it's funny because we could talk about all of the experience that I had beforehand, but honestly, before COVID, none of that matters. I mean, sure, it was helpful, but now that COVID's here, we live in a completely different world. So a lot of companies are going with a hybrid approach where you're in the office for a few days a week. So you can leverage that. So I don't know if people are more or less productive in the office. I'm still looking for studies that call that out. But in the end, you get people into the office if they're already there anyway. Perfect. Then you fly in people from other offices, because I can't count the number of times people have said, oh, we don't have the budget for travel. Oh, we don't have the budget for travel. I'm like, cool. What's your project for this? Or what's your budget for this project? And they're like, $10 million.
Yeah.
I'm like, on a $10 million budget, I'm pretty sure we can buy some plane tickets. Yes. I'm like, I mean, it becomes a rounding error, and people are just used to seeing this as pointless. So the number one thing, and I predict that this is my prediction. So write this down, Vivek. In a year or two, we'll talk about this.
All right.
Business travel is going to skyrocket. People are going to realize that, yes, we're working remotely, but just because we're working remotely doesn't mean that we can get away without building connections with people. So 100%. You're going to start hearing more and more people are getting together. And for my money's worth, I prefer to not have it in somebody's hometown. If it's like the first time you're kicking off a project, put it somewhere where everybody is remote. It'll cost you a little more money in terms of, a hotel and whatever. But you're bonding people because they can't just go home at night and slip back into their regular life. They're together with these people. They're sharing meals. They're working together. They're getting lost on the way to the subway. I mean, you're having all of these little moments that help connect you as human beings. Then when you leave, when we're talking on Zoom, there's a reason why this isn't just a stiff conversation. You and I have known each other for I don't know how long. Yeah. We've gotten into shenanigans in places, and that connects us as people.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And that might be a separate podcast episode where we can do a deep dive. But I wrote it down. We'll definitely talk more about it. Joe, so for you, going as a coach and a facilitator, what's your mindset? Kind of help us understand what's a Agile coach's mindset or Agile facilitator's mindset when they're going into a new team.
So when you're going into a new team, for me as a facilitator, the first thing I want is I'm trying to work myself out of a job. I want the team to collaborate. I want the team to swarm problems. I want the team to talk to each other. When something comes up, I want two people to handle it together rather than having to call out a third person to come in and mediate. So it's all about putting people in the situations where they can build those muscles. And then 100%. Once they've done that, once the product is up and running, once they've realized what it feels like to talk to customers and get that feedback, over time, you realize I'm doing less and less for this team. So then you hang back just looking for emergencies, for difficulties. And usually as an Agile coach, that's when I start asking myself, where's the next place that I'm needed? These people look like they're good. Maybe I'll just go into, I'll be a consultant coming in for a few hours a week with them. But I'm looking for the next team, because you can actually make a team worse by staying with them for too long.
Yes, 100%. So when you're going into the team, I would love to hear Like what's your mindset around creating shared understanding? What are some things that you do to create shared understanding among the team so that they are self-sufficient and then they can self-organize?
So shared understanding is absolutely essential. In fact, shared understanding is part of why back in the day they wanted you to be in the same room together, because they wanted to make sure that everybody could discuss things and get to shared understanding together. Virtually with Zoom and stuff, I don't think that's absolutely essential to have everybody together all the time. Yeah. But the trick to shared understanding is getting people to play back what they think they've heard. So, for example, if you're talking to somebody at work and you're like, hey, let's go out for lunch. And they're like, cool, you want to do Mexican? I'm like, yeah. They'd say, great. In that person's mind, they have picked a restaurant. They're like, my favorite Mexican restaurant is this. In your mind, you've picked a different restaurant. Like maybe you're like, you know what? Chipotle. I could really do a burrito right now. So if you don't play that back, if you don't say, cool, so you want to go to Chipotle, they're going to say, okay, let's go. And then you're going to end up someplace completely different. So noticing when there are those moments of ambiguity and saying, hey, cool, you want to do Mexican, where do you want to go? Or does that mean you want to go to Chipotle? Or basically just saying, this is what I think you're saying. Is it correct? And if the person says no, perfect. Then you just say, okay, what did you mean? Yeah. And then going from that. We run into this a lot in our personal lives, especially with significant others. For example, if you ask somebody how they're doing and they're like, I'm fine. Fine never means fine. Yes. If somebody says fine, something's wrong.
Something's wrong. Yes.
So some people would say, oh, you said you're fine, and you walk away. Yeah, no, that's not what you do. I'm fine. Okay, let's talk about that. What kind of fine? Yeah. Tell me more about how fine you are. And then dive deeper into that, because you've got to understand what's really going on in their head.
100%. And Joe, you're really good at this. I've seen you in action in terms of developing soft skills and helping people get the mindset. Like, kind of walk us through, like, what's your process? Like, how do you do this? Working with a new team member, helping them understand the mindset and the values and the soft skills that is required for them to like show up as a team. How do you do that?
So modeling is the biggest way to get this done, because if people start to see you doing these things, like if, for example, if somebody starts talking about, hey, let's build this feature, and then they go down a path and I'm confused and I say, hold on, time out. Could you tell me more about this? I don't understand that. I like to say that I get paid to ask stupid questions for a living. Yeah. Because there are these obvious questions that for whatever reason people are nervous about bringing up, because they're worried they're not going to look smart. They're worried it's their first day on the job and people aren't going to respect them. There are all sorts of things that keep us from doing the right things in that moment. Yeah. And what I like to do is show people, I'm like, look, I get you're nervous. I get you're uncertain. All of us are nervous. All of us are uncertain. So the way you work through this is to take small risks and notice that nothing terrible happened. Yeah. So I ask dumb questions. I clarify things. I mean, I'm secure enough in my own intelligence that I'm like, if somebody thinks I'm an idiot, fine. I just don't care. Yeah. But in the end, I want to model these things so that now people will say, oh, I saw Joe do this when he didn't understand. I'll do that too. Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you. So for also around collaboration techniques. So how do you unlock that collaboration when the team members are there, they're not talking, they're not feeling comfortable, the safety is quite not there. I've again seen you do that in organizations, and you do that beautifully. So what are some tools, techniques, mindset for unlocking collaboration? That one's harder. First off, it depends on the environment. There are so many different minute details that matter. For example, are you on a Zoom call and nobody's collaborating? So is it one of these where everybody's just their name in the Zoom window? Yes. And it's 10 people in the call. Maybe you're the only person with your camera on. Everybody else is off. So when I hear that or see that, the first thing I ask is, okay, what's going on here? Why don't we want to have cameras on?
Yeah.
And you have to understand there are 50 different reasons why somebody won't have their camera on, and most of them don't matter. So, for example, if somebody's like, well, I didn't get to shower this morning. Okay. I don't really care.
Yeah.
I'm not in the room with you. Just put on a hat, turn on your camera.
Yeah.
Somebody else will, I don't know. The number one thing that people are always worried about is I'm not on camera, so I'm doing something else. Like I'm not on camera, so I'm playing World of Warcraft, or I'm not on camera, so I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's a possibility. And like, you're letting the person work at their house. The only thing keeping them from doing this stuff is their own willpower. So you got to ask yourself, are you going to fight it or are you going to lean into it?
Yeah.
So for the longest time, I mean, we've had smoke breaks since I don't know when, even though we don't smoke anymore. Why can't you have a wow break?
Yeah.
Why can't you say, okay, you know what? I'm going to take 5 or 10 minutes. I'm going to set up my avatar so that they can, I don't know, mine whatever you mine in WoW, or you know what, or just start grinding away on some resource. Let them do it. Like if it gets them that out of their minds, lets them go back to focus, makes them feel more energized and positive at work. I mean, they could do anything with those 5 minutes. Why do you care what they do as long as they come back and they're productive?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so boosting collaboration is really about talking to all of these folks, because if you talk about safety, studies have shown talking about safety is the worst way to improve safety. There's this episode of, have you ever watched Orange is the New Black?
No, I've heard a lot, but I haven't watched it. Give us the story.
Yeah, so there's so much of the show that we can't even discuss, especially if you're watching this at work.
Yes.
But there's this one moment where a woman was assaulted. She's in prison and she was assaulted by somebody, and she's in a support group. And when she's in the support group, they're trying to push her to talk about what happened to her. And she can't, because if she tells what happened to her, this person will come back to get her. Well, as they're having the support group, that person walks in and sits down and starts watching her. And now everybody else in the support group knows she's not safe, knows she doesn't feel safe. And they're pushing her to tell them what happened, who did this to you, knowing that the person is right there.
Ooh.
So they don't know that the person's right there, but she is, but she does. So you're faced with a situation where now you feel less safe than you did before, because you're terrified that these people are pressuring you to make something else happen. Well, if the person that's making you feel unsafe is on your Agile team, guess what? When you're in a room together saying, hey, Bob over there terrifies me, and trying to get you to talk about Bob is the worst thing that you could do.
Yeah. Yeah, so Joe, and the audience, some of the audience, part of the audience for this podcast is also people who haven't really been in these roles, right? Does that actually happen? Like, have you seen it happen?
Oh yeah. I mean, as an example, let's say you're a software developer and your last performance review didn't go well. So now you feel unsafe about your job, and you're in your performance, or you're in your sprint review, and want to talk about how you don't feel unsafe. And that's the sprint review or the sprint retrospective where your manager decides to show up.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why there's that rule about keeping managers out of retrospectives. It's not because they're dangerous in these meetings. It's because so many people feel unsafe around their bosses. How are they expected to say anything if the boss is there?
Yeah. Yeah. So Joe, what are some ways that facilitators, scrum masters, coaches can increase psychological safety in their teams? What are some ways, how can they get started and make some progress on improving safety?
So the first thing that you need to do is, as a coach, you need to connect with every person on that team. And they're going to be people who don't necessarily want to connect with you. And you have to set up one-on-ones. You have to bond with these people. You have to connect with them as human beings. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be best friends with all of them. I mean, I've worked with a bunch of people that I'm not necessarily best friends with, but I'm friendly. We get to know each other. And even if they're not necessarily friendly with you, do you have a mutually respectful relationship? I respect you. We disagree. That's okay. We can have a disagreement and then go grab a cup of coffee after.
Yeah.
So the first thing you do is you connect, because if you connect with them now in those individual situations, you can find out what's making these people feel unsafe. And now you can support them. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean going to this other person and, yelling at them saying, you're making my teammate feel unsafe.
Yeah.
This is where Marla gave me this great quote about coaching that I use all the time. Yeah. Great coaches are lazy and curious. So the first thing I'll do is show up with curiosity. Yeah. I mean, very few people are evil just to be evil. In fact, nobody's the villain of their own story. There's a reason why these things are happening while they're treating people this way. Yeah. Finding out what they are and then helping both of these people through that issue is part of why we exist as Agile coaches. That helps 100%. Helps improve the team, helps get them to a higher performance level, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Yeah. And with that mindset and that intention, like you are going, and even though if you're lazy and curious, like you're going and making that connection, right? Like you're making that individual connection, which is developers might not come to you and, build that. So you're taking that initiative, which is really huge. And when you spark this conversation, when you start talking, build these bonds, you collect data around like who they are, what they want, their challenges, their struggles. So in a way, you are taking that interpersonal risk. It's like, hey, like what's going on? So I love that. Right. And when people wonder what an Agile coach does all week, I mean, if you think about it, if you've got a 7 to 12 person team, if you're doing one-on-ones for a half hour, even, or maybe an hour a day or an hour a week, you're talking about that's 3 to 6 hours of just meeting one-on-one with people every week or every other week. Yeah. And usually what you try to do is space it out so that you're not taking too many people away from the team every week. Yeah. But it's essential. So connecting with every team member, connecting with the scrum master, connecting with the managers who are associated with this team, connecting with the stakeholders who are associated with this team, and building up those connections as people as well. Yeah. Really, as an Agile coach, so that's part of your responsibility, is going out and making sure that all of these people are dynamically doing the things that people need to do. And then on top of that, you have the technical practices, making sure that people are doing basically all of the technical practices are the foundation on which Agile teams live. Absolutely. So, Joe, what does the work or the alignment work with the leadership stakeholder? What does that look like? What's the dynamics there for people aspiring to go become an Agile coach? So a lot of it deals with expectation management, because the higher up in an organization you get, the less cut and dry the jobs are. I mean, at your base level, entry level job, they have very strict instructions. We want you to do this, 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 and this. The higher up you get in an organization, it's much less strict. It's, hey, we need this to happen. And then you sit down with your team and you say, okay, how could we make this happen? So the higher up in the organization you get, it's a question of, hey, stakeholder, what is it that you want to see from this team? What does this team need to do to make you happy, to be successful in your mind? What are the things that you can see that would keep them from being successful? And how can we prevent them? And then what can we do so that in the future, when the team needs help, you're in a position to help them? Yeah. Because people forget that just because you have air cover from senior leaders, they can't just wave a magic wand and make bad stuff go away. Yeah. So if you've actively worked with your stakeholders to say, hey, look, in the future, if something happens, I want to make sure that you've got everything you need to support us. So what do we need to demonstrate? What do we need to show as a team so that later on, if something happens, you can point to this and say, I get this thing went wrong, but look at all the cool stuff they've been doing over here. Definitely. And for success metrics, right? What are you helping teams create? Like, or what are the metrics you want, or data that you want teams to keep in mind and keep transparent when you're working with teams? So back when I was a director managing process definition of metrics. This came up all the time.
Yes.
The important thing to remember about metrics is that metrics are a way of monitoring goals.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to ask yourself, what are the goals these metrics are helping us deliver or helping us achieve?
Yeah.
So people love to measure velocity. They're like, cool, we've got a number. Let's just put that in reports. What goal is measuring velocity supposed to give you? Because teams aren't supposed to just have the highest possible velocity that they could ever get. You want a stable, consistent velocity so that you can plan and so that people can say, this is what we're going to get when we get.
Yeah.
So why on earth would you track a metric that's only goal is to be about the same?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
No, I want to go a little deeper because you're literally doing this for 100 plus teams and you're literally the director of metrics, something metrics. So a lot of people actually have this question. So what did you end up measuring, and like, how did you go about thinking about what to measure across 100 teams?
Well, and they gave me a hard time about this when I interviewed, because I had to interview with multiple vice presidents, senior directors, all sorts of people. And one vice president in particular, who was the head of technology at the time, lit me up during this interview because he asked me what I should measure. And I'm like, well, what are your business goals? I need to know what your goals are so that I can tell you what to measure to achieve them. And he's like, I don't care about those. I only care about agile metrics and agile goals. And I'm like, well, agility by itself isn't a goal. If you're doing agile because agile is the goal, you're doing it wrong. It's agility is a tool to help you achieve something. So what is it that you want to achieve? And once we know what you want to achieve, let's track those metrics.
Yeah.
So this guy just kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And finally he was like, what would you measure? What would you measure? And I'm like, earnings per share, cycle time, net promoter scores. I'm like, this is all about making our customers happy. Yeah. It's product stuff.
Yeah.
So if these are the products we're delivering, what do we need to measure so that we know our customers are getting what they want the way they want?
100%. Yeah. And from like, those are good. And then like individual teams, it's not that was, I don't think you're looking at some of the metrics, right? I mean, I don't know if they went well or not, but you're looking at some of the metrics. So what did the teams end up measuring or having some of those metrics? What metrics did you ask them?
Cycle time was the first thing that we started tracking, because that tells you how long it takes for something to go from concept to cash. And there are different ways to measure it. And I apologize. There's 4 or 5 different ways that you can measure this when you're looking at flow through an organization. So if I use one word to describe it, like lead time and cycle time are very different. Cycle time is when work starts on a team and ends on a team.
Yeah.
Cycle time is concept to cash. It's when did I have this idea to when do I deliver it? So those are things that are really important. Quality is really important. So not measured by the defects that are on your team as they're working it, but how many defects show up when we go to production. So when we release, how many defects show up? How long does it take to resolve them? Those are some of the most important things. We did measure Agile team maturity, but that was a means to an end. So we came up with our own assessment of how mature an Agile team was, specifically because we wanted to know, as teams mature, as they get better and better at agility, what happens to these other metrics? Does their lead time go down? Does their cycle time go down? Does their quality improve? And if it did, cool, we know that agility is helping our organization deliver. If it didn't, and for whatever reason, a team was high performing, but they were really struggling, that was a note to us. We had to say, okay, somebody needs to go track down this team and figure out what's going on. If they're really good at Agile, why can't they deliver? Is there a stakeholder that's giving them problems? Do they not have customer contact? And really all it boiled down to is, so if the goal is to have all of our customers be happy, high net promoter scores, earnings per share, when something is wrong with one of these metrics, it's a data point. It says, I need to go out and talk to these people to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. And so what things did you do? I mean, you're the leader of the organization. A lot of things happen where, when you have 100 teams working, it's a chaos. So I'm curious, what kind of lesson learned, or what didn't go well, or what was not useful in that engagement?
That is a really good question. You floored me for a minute. I got to think about that. So the biggest thing that I took away when you start leading multiple, like hundreds of teams and 100+ Scrum Masters, is that your job is different. Mm-hmm. Your job is to support agility because it supports your people.
Yeah.
So in the end, it's all about less about what are the teams doing and more about what are your people doing and how can you support them so that they can make their team successful. Mm-hmm. So I did a lot of teaching because I wanted to make sure that all of our Scrum Masters knew, like that was one of the ways that we met was through training from the back of the room. Yes. I wanted to make sure that every person who was on our team could teach, even if it was just a quick 5-minute pull aside and teach. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew how to do that and how to do that in a positive, engaging way. We taught facilitation because we wanted to make sure people had the tools to make self-organizing teams. One-on-ones are important because these people are working with the teams and the stakeholders. So you need to talk to them and say, hey, what's keeping you up at night? What can I do to support you? How can I help you grow? And then backing your people. For example, I had a person who was on my team that I never had to fire very many people because we hire good people and we help develop them. But there was one situation where somebody just crossed the line. They did something that was they started like belittling a team, tearing them down. I mean, it was the kind of thing that is just not okay.
Yeah.
So one of my managers needed to fire somebody and I supported them. I'm like, okay, tell me why you did this. And they told me, and I was like, that absolutely makes sense. It's like, so we got to support. And then I had to provide air cover. So I had to go into a VP's office and talk about the fact that this is why this person was fired, to the point where HR came to me and said, you need to unfire this person. And, oh, by the way, I'm going to coach you on this. And coaching you on this is you should do what your VPs tell you to do.
Yes.
And it was just, I mean, you will run into situations where as a leader, your job isn't to make sure that the organization runs clockwork the way it's supposed to. The vast majority of your time is spent on when stuff goes wrong, how do I pick up the pieces and get us back to what we should be doing?
Yes, nice. Thank you for articulating that. The last question that we have for you, Joe, today is, so in that engagement and a few other engagements, you've hired a lot of Scrum Masters, or you've been in the hiring leadership team. So when you're hiring Agile facilitators and Scrum Masters, what are you looking for? Like, what kind of mindset, what kind of skill set are you looking for? What kind of question do you ask? Like, give us like your hiring strategy for a Scrum Master.
So for me,
a product owner. Yeah.
Sure. We'll start with a Scrum Master because I'd look for very different things. In a Scrum Master, I look for mindset. I mean, is this the kind of person who's going to support the team, who's going to help them, who's going to put the team before themselves, who cares enough about their people to connect with them on a personal level to help resolve issues? So people always say, oh, you can't be best friends with the people on your team. You're right. Yeah. I mean, it's hard if somebody is your best friend and, you have to give them negative feedback. But on the flip side, I personally prefer that because if I'm on a team with friends, that means that I trust them. I have a level of security and safety with them that I don't with other people. And it's hard when you have to have hard conversations with people anyway. Yeah. That's not going to be better just because you're not friends with the people that you work with.
Right.
So I definitely look for mindset to start. I want people who are going to make the environment that these people are working on positive, that is going to be helpful, supportive. From there, I need to make sure that they understand enough of this Agile stuff to get the job done. I mean, Google is a thing. So I hear people like to Google when they have questions. Yes. So I don't care if you have the Agile Manifesto or the 12 principles committed to memory. I mean, I don't care. Yes. I care that you know enough about Agile to talk to the people around you, to answer answer questions, to go look up questions that you don't have the answers to, and that you're willing to learn more as you go along.
Mm.
So somebody who shows up and they're like, I took a 2-day CSM class, so now I'm an expert on Scrum. And then you start talking to them about Scrum and they're like, that's not the way Scrum works. I'm like, okay. You talk to Ken, you talk to Jeff, they'll tell you they don't know anything about how we as a company do business. So they tried to make a framework that was abstract enough that you could tailor it to make sure it works in your situation.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. We have to tailor it. No, you can't tailor Scrum. It has to be done according to the book. At that point, I don't even listen to the rest of the call. I'm like, oh, okay. That's an interesting point of view. I start like, hey, what am I going to have for lunch today? How long until I can make this call end?
Yeah. But actually you've shared a few other stories that I would want the audience to share. So what other red flags or things that people say in the interview drives you, or once you not want to hire them, or
One guy, I asked him the question, so what do you do if the team misses a commitment? So you set a goal of delivering a feature at the end of a sprint and you missed it. And one of the people that I was interviewing looked at me dead in the camera and said, I punish them. And I was like, what? What does that even mean? And the guy's like, I punish them. And I'm just sitting there. I stop. So I'm actually at this point, I'm interviewing this for a friend of mine who's on vacation. And I'm just like, this is a joke. I'm convinced he's punking me, that this guy's going to start laughing. And then, no, he was like, I punish them. They need to know that the commitment is essential. And so I was supposed to rate this person with numbers. So I rated them a 2.
Yes.
And when my friend came back, he was like, oh, I forgot to tell you, when we rate these people, we're supposed to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, not 1 to 5. I'll go ahead and adjust your numbers for you. And I'm like, no, I knew we were rating them on 1 to 10. I gave this person a 2 for a reason.
Yes.
They're like, what could they have possibly said that gave them a 2? And it's like, he said that he would punish them if they missed a commitment. And he was like, wow, really? Yeah.
Yes. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So what about for product owners? What kind of mindset, skill set are you looking for in a product owner for your teams?
So product management is a tough job. So product owners are really product managers. It's their job to work with stakeholders to understand how we're going to improve the product, what features we're going to deliver, what features we're going to delay. All of this requires a mindset of responding to customers, building a product, go-to-market strategy, release strategy, competitive analysis, all sorts of things that are not a part of Scrum, are not a part of Agile itself, but that are essential to making sure that your product is actually going to work in the space. So I start talking to people about that. And I don't care for a minute if they did it in an Agile environment, because all of these same skills apply no matter where you were. So if they say, hey, I've done this before, I've led this product, or I've done this and I've done that. I'm like, okay, great. I can teach you Scrum. I can teach you Agile. That's easy. But those other skills require a lot of practice. So we've actually started working with people in the product development, product owner, product management space, basically saying, hey, look, let's teach you the hard skills so that we can finish up with the easy skills and you can get out there and deliver.
100%. Thank you, Joe. That was an awesome conversation. I learned a lot. It was really entertaining as well. And I really appreciate you for this episode. We have another episode already lined up. So the next episode, we're going to be doing a deep dive around Agile coaching and how to actually go become an expert Agile coach. So I'm really looking forward for that conversation, Joe. With that, thank you. And any last words that you've got for the audience?
Nope, just go out there and keep connecting with people. I don't care if it's on your Agile team or if it's in your life. Go out and build connections to other people. A lot of what we're seeing in the world would be made better if people just treated people as human beings.
Beautiful. Thank you, Joe.
All right, that's a wrap with this episode. Thank you for listening till the end. We hope these podcasts are providing value on your Agile journey. If you haven't visited our website, theagilecoach.com, we highly suggest you for other courses and supporting material on your journey. You can also get access to our self-paced courses or learn more about the live training that we provide to become a Scrum Master, Product Owner, Product Manager. With that, we will see you on the next episode. Love and best wishes from the Agile Coach.